Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Oh, hello, Levovit. What's up, Tenko? Chu, Colton? No worries, Naxergs. Just let me know if you can all hear me all right, if I need to boost the volume or anything. Yep. Okay. Audio is good. That's good. Okay. Audio is broken. What's up, Ace Roy? Um, okay, so in the Discord, oh, a little bit louder? Sure. Let me see. Okay, wait, let's see. Is that louder? No, that's not louder. If I do this, that should be... No, that's not louder. Hold on. Maybe I just move this. Damn it. Sec. Okay. That should be a little bit better. Oh, thank you, Spencer. How did I get so smart? I don't think I'm all that smart. Um, okay, in the Discord, we were talking about the moons, the multiple moons. So let me just pull this up. Let's see what we're looking at here. So this is, we are on the Moonlight Altar. And as you can see, there are two moons visible here. The moons, yes. So that moon, I'm going to go into free cam. Hold on. Da, da, da. So this moon is the moon that you see everywhere. It's the one that has that, kind of hard to see here, but it has that, that sort of ring design. One second. Let me just move this out of the way. So this is the normal moon that we see throughout the game. This is the one that appears when Ronnie first appears at the Church of Ella. Oh hey, Saucy Pup, what's up? So this is the normal moon that we see, and this I was just talking to Sekiro Doobie and V Limit and some other people about the moons. So this is actually part of the skybox, and if I start getting close to it, then you'll see it starts to like. Let me see. Actually, if I go down below, I bet it's gonna get weird. If I go below the map, it might. Yeah, so you can see this is just part of the skybox. So this is just like a flat texture essentially. Well, it's I guess it's a cube map, but there's no dimensions to this thing. That's the moon that we normally see, and it's sometimes it's a bit brighter, sometimes it's a bit darker. It's the one that appears in Radahn's arena. This is the one that we generally see throughout the world. The other moon is this one, and this is very different. This is actually a 3D model, so you can kind of see how it's, when I move, there's actually dimensions to it. And kind of hard to tell with the lighting here, but you can kind of see that it's a model. Let me see. Yeah, so you can see that there's actually something there. It's got a lot of little craters, and it's sort of covered with this effect. Can we extract somehow clear picture of that flat moon from the game files? Yeah, I'm gonna know nothing about like data mining. So I figured that's probably something I should learn some basics of, but I haven't been able to do that yet. So I'm going to look into trying to figure that out. But um, it is kind of interesting, though, that if we get a little bit away, like you can almost see on this one, like to me it looks like there's the model which has all these craters, and then there's this sort of spectral covering, sort of frosty covering. Um, and on the frosty covering, you can almost see those two, that line. It kind of looks like it's the same thing. It's not quite there, but you can kind of see it. Let me go back and compare. Kind of hard to tell from here, but okay. So the reason that I'm interested in this is because the concept of inversion is something I've been thinking about a lot, and that's sort of, I had this idea about the hellfin being the sort of the inverse, the roots of the Erd tree. And I'm thinking that maybe the moon, maybe this moon is the inversion of the other moon. So if we look at, where is it? Here. So this is the moon in Ronnie's ending, and it's a really weird, this is the concept art, so this is not exactly what it looks like in game, but it's pretty damn close. I mean, they didn't really change it. I suppose I could pull up a video of the ending. I don't think I have the footage on me. But the is this good quality? Let's see. Bum bum bum. Let's see where it is. So put this in 1080p, and let me bring this up. Browser. 1 second. Yeah, someone said, is that Ronnie's great rune? I don't know about that. Let's go here. So this is the Ronnie's ending. Let's just go back a little bit. So you can see it sort of like lights up, and then there's definitely movement, like things are being sucked in. It's very weird. And it almost looks like there's like galaxies. So whatever Ronnie's doing here, I mean, just visually what it seems like is that something is happening inside the moon, that this is like the moon contains the stars, it contains the night. There's something going on inside it, whether Ronnie's going inside it or something else is inside it, but it definitely seems like there's an inside to the moon, which is important. And let's just see the whole thing here. There's like stars in the background. There's all this frost and fog. But yeah, there's definitely like stuff being sucked into the middle. So my thought was, what if where is it? What if Wait, where's the other moon? I'm confused. What if this moon is the outside and this moon is the inside? Like an inverted sphere. And even though that sounds absolutely crazy, let me just list a couple things that are important to this. So, number one is we have this idea of outer order and inner order, which maybe I can find those. Give me 1 second here. Outer order and inner order, and that's sort of it's sort of unclear exactly what is going on there. Do I not have? Aren't there like the gestures somewhere in here? Oh, let me just pull it up on I'll just someone probably put it here. Oh no, they didn't. Here we go. Okay, so outer order. And one of the strange things about this is, yeah, so Melina gives you outer order when she says the line about, which one is that? That's the one about, America saying, like, our faith, our grace will be increased. Why dost thou falter? Okay. I should have pulled everything up in advance, but I didn't, so let me find it all. Do, 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 do. Did I miss it? When resting at the... It's the Minor Erdtree Church, which is also a weird church because that's the one with... Okay, yeah. So this is what Melina says. I declare, this is Marika's words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order. The depths. To search the depths. That's important. Through understanding of the proper way, our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter? And then Melina, or from that conversation, you get this gesture, the outer order gesture. Then there's the inner order gesture, which you get from this one, which you get when you interact with Dee's brother in the Shifra Aqueduct. And that's sort of interesting, partly because, okay, like Dee, you have the two twins, and they don't speak to each other, they stand apart. And one of them is only, like, Dee, Hunter of the Dead, is only in Roundtable Hold and in the above ground world, whereas Dee, Beholder of Death, is only underground in the below ground world. So that's kind of interesting. And then that's where you get the inner order. It's the one that's inside the earth, whereas Melina gives outer order to you. And then also the fact that she says this at the Minor Erdtree Church, and the Minor Erdtree Church, well, maybe I should go there actually. I gotta turn off this. But the Minor Erdtree Church is also kind of weird because you have the Erdtree, which has, you know, this golden spectral thing going on. And it seems like there is a physical tree underneath that. So, okay, not if we go inside it, but we go up to the top, let's say. So you can see there's like some branches don't have this gold. Oops, stop. These controls are terrible. And you can see how it's like not fully covering everything. So when you look at some of the branches, where are we? You can see how it's like a projection, and it's an illusion, and you can see sort of through it when you're far away. So there's something really weird about this sort of carapace of the Erd tree. And then when you look at the minor Erd trees, let's see, where are we now? We're in Lindell, so where's the closest one? Like here, these are just normal looking trees. They've got, they've got these like light producing leaves, but the trunk itself is not anything special. And that's all the minor Erd trees are like that. But then if you look at the minor Erd tree church, you get this one, which is like, it's almost like it's halfway there. You can see it's like a physical trunk, but there's this weird gold thing going on. Actually, I haven't looked at the upper limits here. Oh, this is going to be way too fast, but... I should just take the speed down. But yeah, you can see that... God damn it. Okay, hold on. Let me just move the speed down to something more reasonable. Where are we? Okay, sorry if I'm giving anyone... Okay, but you can see that the trunk here it's like halfway in between. It's sort of beginning to develop a gold outer layer. Von Lustra says, any thoughts on the idea that America's dialogue there is actually Radigan speaking? That was initially my thought. I don't completely discount it now, but a point that someone brought up is it's odd that if Radigan was the one who founded Golden Order fundamentalism, because that seems to be what is happening here, like Melena's dialogue is referring to the foundation of Golden Order fundamentalism specifically, not the Golden Order as a whole, but America is basically saying there's no more, like, we need to stop relying on pure blind faith. We need to understand things, and that's sort of what fundamentalism is about. It's scholarship in all but name. So this seems to be where that starts, and that's also where you get the Golden Order seal right at the base of this tree. In favor of it being Radigan, there are the golden centipedes here, and you find those at the Church of Pilgrimage and the Bellum Church where the Radigan statues are. Oh, whoa, this one is also like that. I never even noticed that. That's weird. Damn. Okay, that is strange. There's multiple golden trees. But I think part of that comes from the idea that, like, the early days of the Golden Order, it's all about this belief that the Erd tree is perfect and eternal, right? And then, well, okay, forget about exactly when this happens, but at some point, we have minor Erd trees, right? We have Erd tree seeds, we have illusory trees, we have all these different, like, the Erd tree isn't this singular one thing. Now the option is for multiple trees to exist. So, and that's sort of like fundamentalism is at least okay with that idea, because they're understanding something deeper about the world. It's not just worship of the Erd tree specifically, this blind worship of that. It's understanding of some deeper reality, and that makes it okay to believe in the existence of multiple trees. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because this carapace um, of gold on the outside of the trunk does bring up something interesting about this concept of inversion and like insides and outsides. Um, oh, I was going to make the point on the point about whether this was Radigan. Yeah, so the golden centipedes might indicate that it was Radigan, or at least that's sort of some evidence for that. The only issue for me is that it's odd if Radigan was the founder of Golden Order fundamentalism, that Goldmask and Corin don't really know who Radigan is, besides the fact that he's a lord. And nowhere is it mentioned that he is really connected with Golden Order fundamentalism in like an institutional way. Like he develops incantations of fundamentalism, but it's never mentioned that he is like an important figure in that, sect of the religion. And if Goldmask being this like the preeminent Golden Order fundamentalist, and Corin knowing all about this, you would expect them to sort of be more aware of Radigan, or maybe mention that when they're talking about Radigan, and they don't. So if it was Radigan here, it couldn't have been. I think it would have to be. Other people would have to think that it's America still. So I mean, that gets into the whole problem of Radigan in America. But again, also that's another example of like Radigan in America. Maybe one of them is the inside and one of them is the outside. You also have like outer gods versus maybe this theme of like, America having the Elden Ring, or America and Radigan both having the Elden Ring inside them, and the fire giants having the fell god inside them. So these are sort of inner gods, and maybe even, yeah, well, there's something about outer and inner. And I was thinking the whole idea, like a ring, is something which divides, like it encircles something. So there's an inner part of a ring and an outer part of a ring. And it's oh look, Hidetaka Miyazaki is in chat. That's pretty epic. This minor tree was fed by unalloyed gold. I don't know about that. Um, but yeah, I'm thinking about all the different ways that this could manifest, because um, one thing to consider is like you have the the mundane world, and then you have the celestial realm. And so you have like um let me see, do we see any stars here? No, let me just warp to somewhere with some stars. um the celestial realm, like I made this video on alchemy, and I never mentioned really astrology, but that was a super important part of the alchemical tradition, because like you might think about something like mercury. Mercury is this metal, super important metal in alchemy, maybe the most important metal. And then you also have Mercury the planet, and you have Mercury the god. And these are all sort of equated to each other, because there's this idea that there's a relationship between the mundane realm and the celestial realm, that it's this idea in the Emerald Tablet. This is this famous Hermetic text, and the famous line is, "As above, so below." This idea that like there's this correspondence between the movement of the spheres, the movement of the celestial, celestial objects of planets and and stars, and the movement of metals and materials on Earth. And that's why you have the seven planetary metals. You have, Mercury is Mercury, lead is Jupiter, um, so on and so forth. Or wait, no, lead is lead Saturn? No, I'm getting them mixed up. Mars is iron. And it's the same symbol for iron as it is for Mars, the same alchemical symbol. So there's this correspondence, and the idea is that they're sort of intrinsically linked. That as things move around in the heavens, it dictates or it corresponds to things moving on and transforming on Earth. And that's why the sort of ancient astrological tradition, that's why they believed these things mattered, is that if you see, certain movements in the stars are going to tell you something about the real world because there is this correspondence there. And you can think of that as maybe being like one of those is the outer world and one of those is the inner world. So that's one way to think of it. Then in Elden Ring, I think you also have like the underground seems to be something. Oh, Saturn is tin. Thank you. Oh no, wait, lead, Saturn, tin is Venus. Tin is Venus, really? Bronze, Jupiter, iron, Mercury. Wait, wait. Well, I'm confused. No, no, no. Mars is definitely iron. Mercury is Mercury. But the one, yeah, the upworld and the downworld, the eternal cities and so on. Like it doesn't seem to me that it's just a physical, like that they're just separated by space entirely. It seems like there is something more metaphysical going on there, and that might be an inner world and an outer world. Um, Crunchy, what percentage of Elden Ring do you think is alchemy based, if you could ballpark it? I don't think any of it is alchemy based exactly. I think Miyazaki is, in my view, is very well read on all sorts of mystical traditions, whether it's alchemy and hermeticism and astrology, Gnosticism, um, uh, Jung. I mean, I don't know, maybe Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, the Eleusinian mysteries. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how much he knows about any one of these things, but my sense is that he's very familiar with with that whole range of mystical traditions. And when he creates a world, he's drawing on those symbols. Um, so I don't know that I don't know that when he's creating, Elden Ring, that he's thinking like, oh, okay, um, I'm gonna represent like, okay, America, for example, America being sort of associated with Mercury, and Mercury is this thing that exists between states, and it sort of symbolizes the being between life and death, and it's represented as this semicircle with the feminine symbol below it, and that's like America is tied to the semicircle, and she's a woman. So you can see that as like an alchemical inspiration. I don't think it's so direct as that. I think he's probably collating a bunch of different influences and just creating something new. And it just, some bits of alchemy, some bits of other things kind of percolate through there, but I don't think any of it is like, you have to be careful about looking at sources of influence. I mean, you can do the same thing with like the Greek gods or the Norse gods. Um, and it's dangerous, I think, to read too much in that direction. some of it I think is that there are sort of archetypes and symbols that go beyond any one tradition. I mean, the idea of like an enormous tree, for example, um, that isn't something that starts with Yggdrasil in the Norse myths. Yggdrasil is one version of that archetype, but that's a archetype that appears in lots of different myths. So I would be hesitant to say that like the Erd Tree is inspired by Yggdrasil. I think it's more like that's just a when you're designing a certain kind of concept or a certain kind of world, that's gonna be something that you come up with, whether you've heard of Yggdrasil or not. That's like a really important um, archetype, the tree of life, the giant tree that connects the worlds and so on. Yeah, and as someone pointed out, there's also the George R. R. Martin component here, and I don't know much about him, but my sense is that actually they're quite aligned, um, Martin and Miyazaki, on their understanding of mystical traditions. But someone posed an interesting question in chat, which I'm going to get to in a second. But also, I just wanted to point it out. Sekiro Dubi made this observation that maybe the veil of the shadow of the Erd Tree is like what we're looking at right now, these beams of light. Because I think there's actually two models. Um, so there's like the beams, and then there's something which kind of hard to see here, but there's something that's not quite so. Yeah, kind of interesting. I think that's probably right. They don't really bend at all, but they are a little bendy. Yeah, I think that's right. And that again, I think is this outer inner thing that like the shadow of the Erd Tree, it's the inversion. This is a veil of light, so to speak, and the shadow of the Erd Tree is this veil of shadow. Oh, and Sekiro Dubi's here. Oh, the thing that you cross there, those are the flat things. The golden ones are the cylinders. Interesting. Yeah, it really does seem to correspond pretty well. Oh God, using this free cam. Yeah, you can see they're quite bendy here. That's definitely the veil. I think that just makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm totally sold on that. Yeah, I think we're definitely going to the middle of the map. Although it might be the middle, but not the middle, because this is Miyazaki. I think there's a lot of things that are it's one thing, but it's also another thing. That's interesting. Huh. Yeah, that's definitely the veil. Um, someone asked, um, oh, about the Melina being Mikola thing. Um, I'll get to that in a second. And I also see Tim Diggity here, so that's kind of cool. Hello. Um, I wanted to pull up one more thing, which is where is it? Oh, it was in the. I had it here. Okay, so this is Plato's allegory of the cave. So Plato, he was a Greek philosopher, and I can't remember exactly where this comes from, but he has this story where he's relating this allegory about a cave, and the idea is that you have these prisoners who are um, chained up, and all they can see is the shadows on a cave, and the shadows in a cave on a cave wall, and these shadows are being cast by real objects, right? But the prisoners, they have no idea the real objects exist. They see only the shadows. And so Plato is sort of going through this idea that not an allegory. Plato actually did that to people. Yeah, right. But he's basically making this point about how the prisoners, if you showed them the real objects, like they wouldn't understand that these are the real things, and what they're seeing is just this sort of false, lesser reality. And if you brought them outside, they would just be blinded by the sun. Like they think that the shadows are their reality. Oh, it's from Republic. Okay, yeah, Plato's Republic. People have speculated about what exactly he's talking about, whether this is about like, because a lot of the Republic is about politics, and um, but it's this interesting idea of he sort of speculates about the existence of forms. So that would be like these things that are casting shadows. That basically there's this reality of forms. Like one way to think of it is, um, if you imagine you look at a bunch of different trees, and every tree is slightly different, but there's something common to all trees. There's some qualities that are common to all trees that makes them in the same category. And so you can imagine, like, conceptually, you can imagine there is this the perfect tree, the ideal tree, in which it only has the qualities that are common to all trees and doesn't have any other qualities. It's not something that could really exist in the real world, but it's this sort of archetypal tree. And that's basically the Platonic ideal. That's the Platonic form of the tree. It's this thing which and basically like in the real world, the world that we experience is just the shadows on the cave. All the trees that we see are just shadows of that true form of the tree. And so there's this sort of this world of forms which is more abstract. It's like a different layer of reality, you can imagine it, and it's casting shadows onto our world. Our world is the world of shadows. It's just the reflection of these. It's the projection of these true forms. Um, and I think that might be going on in Elden Ring or something similar to that, because like especially with the two moons, one and by the way, there's the two moons, but then there's also the black moon which shattered, which is kind of weird. But I was thinking like, well, maybe there is a maybe the moon is something which exists as a platonic form, and that these all these different moons that we see are just the sort of the shadows on the cave. They're just projections of the real thing. And that's why it all kind of corresponds to everybody's different viewpoint. Like you have a certain belief and you see things differently. That's an important idea in all of these games, but especially Elden Ring. Um, the way that you see things, the way that what you believe and what you see is like it. there's a correspondence to reality, not just in a uh, not just in perception, but also in some kind of creation. And so, like the idea that there's multiple moons, well, maybe there is only one moon in the world of forms, but then uh, depending on your sort of your viewpoint, your worldview about the moon, uh, the actual manifestation of that in the world is different. The shadow that it casts a shadow at a different angle, you could say, something like that. Um, Subjective experience versus objective reality. Yeah, in a way, it's more like because there's also this the Platonic form kind of thing. It has a lot of parallels with the Jungian archetypes because Jung believed in this world of the collective unconscious, which like basically when you're dreaming, this is something that you're accessing, and it's this thing that's common to all humanity. And there are these archetypes. It's inhabited by archetypes that are things like the tree of life. And so the idea is like in this world of the collective unconscious, the the tree or the great flood or the great mother or any of these archetypes, these are it's like the Platonic form. There's something more abstract. They don't exist as real objects with all the imperfections and variations of real objects, but they exist as, yeah, just like on this abstract dimension, you could imagine it as. And I think that might be what's going on in Elden Ring, something like that. Tango says, so Renala and Ronnie see the same moon, but they see it under different circumstances with different eyes. For Renala, it appears full and bright. For Ronnie, it's cold and dark. Not exactly, because I think they do look different, and I'm kind of liking this idea of one of the moons being the inside of the moon versus the outside. One of the interesting things about a if you draw, actually, okay, maybe hold on one second. I'm gonna I'm gonna need some visual aids here to explain what I'm talking about. So, um, okay, how do I put this on screen? Is this visible now? Yeah, should be. Okay, so you imagine that you have something like, um, Jesus, why is that so big? Okay, so you have something like this, a triangle. Okay, now if you invert the triangle, you get something that you can see is different, right? I hope this is actually appearing on screen because I can't really see. Yeah, it looks like it is. Okay. Um, so if you invert it, it looks different. Or I mean, we can invert it based on different something like that. Okay, whatever. Um, but if I draw, oops. If I draw like a circle, hello? What the heck? Why is this not okay, I don't really know how to use Photoshop that well, I have to say. Okay, this is fine. All right, if we have a ring, now if you invert that, it doesn't change. At least not if you invert it on any, like on a vertical or horizontal axis. If you think about inverting it like inside out, it's the same. I'm not going to be able to explain this very well. What? Oh, thanks. That's okay. I'll get by with my poor visual aids. But if you think about like, so here's the inside of the circle and here's the outside, right? Now if you were to invert it so that now this is the outside and this is the inside, you've inverted the circle, but it looks the same in a way. And you can imagine doing this with a sphere. Like if you have a sphere, the inversion of a sphere is, it's still a sphere. This is sort of like what black holes are. It's like a hole in space. It's a spherical hole in space, but it's as a whole, it's the same as an object. It's still a sphere. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm not explaining this very well, but no, I don't want to say this. But I'm thinking that the dark moon, the Ronnie moon, is an inverted sphere. Let me warp back to. Are we schizophrenic maxing today with theories? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like turning a tennis ball inside out. Exactly. Well, it's like, okay, it would be like if you imagine, let's go outside. Okay, like this is a ball in the sky, right? This one is, so the ball in the sky, like we could go inside it and that's the inside of the ball and everything else here is the outside. Now just flip that. So everything out here is the inside of that moon. And if you were to go inside it, you would go outside the moon. That's what I'm thinking. And that's why I brought up this image, because I think that might be what's going on. And it also corresponds with all these things like the shadow. Like in Jung, it's the shadow is the unconscious. It's what's hidden inside you. That's the inner you, versus like the projection of yourself outside, which is what you manifest. And that's maybe the shadow tree is like the inside of the tree, and the shadow beasts are like what's inside the Empyrean. Um, if we're inside the moon, how can we see it? So you could still see the outside, like a black hole. Like a black hole is a hole. It's not okay. It's not really a hole, although some people think maybe it is some kind of like wormhole. But you imagine something like a black hole. Like you can still see the boundary of what's inside and outside, because it's got an inside and an outside. That's where I'm thinking now. Okay, I'm just reading some comments now. Sekiro says, Crunchy, I was looking at cutscenes with free cam, etc. What's your take on Serash being in the Shadowlands? Where is he coming from, actually? Which dimension? Same with Godfrey or Margit. Um, So I'm not sure what you meant with Godfrey there exactly. Um, I don't know if I would say that Sarosh is in the Shadowlands, but it might be something equivalent to that. Because if you say that he literally is in the Shadowlands, then like is there a equivalent of Godfrey walking around the Shadowlands as like a spirit version, or um yeah, I'm not sure how I would put that. There definitely is like he's definitely in some other plane of existence and he tries to make his way in. But again, I think it kind of it might, if we take this like inside outside view, if you imagine that Sarosh is inside Godfrey, right? That spirit Sarosh is inside Godfrey. And then he starts to come out and Godfrey's like, "No, I'm going to kill you now so that I like I don't know, absorb you somehow." Um um if I have cheat engine, you can just play cutscenes. I haven't tried that, so this might be disastrous, but I can definitely try that. If I can find it. Um, I'm not seeing it here. Um, all right. Well, I'll look into that and see how I can do that later. Um, yeah, I definitely think Sarosh is not in. I mean, he's not fully in the real world, or if this is the real world, he's not fully in our world. He's somewhere else, partly. I don't know if I would say exactly it's the Shadowlands, but I think it like whatever, however the Shadowlands is, um, whatever its relationship is to the lands between, I think it's an equivalent kind of relationship. Yeah, and I think it's interesting with Ronnie that Blythe is just like a guy. I guess they never really interact. They're not like standing by each other, but they're not. There's no special difference there. There is the baleful shadow, but because like with Malekith, he's in the outside world, you could say, while Marika's inside the Erd Tree, or he's in Farum, which is like trapped in time. So there's like a distance there, and you could say that with Sarosh and Horalu that there is some kind of there's some kind of distance, which then, or rather with Godfrey and Sarosh, it's too weird for Sarosh to be just a completely separate character. He must be metaphysically connected to um, Godfrey. Could the Godwin corpse we see not be from his dead body at all, but rather Godwin's dead spirit itself invading the lands between from the Hellfin by bursting through the roots of the Erd Tree? Um, I'm not sure because the body underneath. Let me see if I have I been there in this save file. Um, the body underneath the Erd Tree is. It has like a. Like it's got this. tattered cloak, right? And that is pretty close. Is a pretty close match for. In fact, it might be exactly the same as Marika's. Let me find that. Um, ba, 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 ba. Yeah, so you see that with that like gold leaf pattern, sort of dark blue. So it would be like, why would he have this cloak unless that was him? There is the body under Stormveil, and that makes it a little bit weirder. But like, I don't know. I think that's meant to be. I think that's meant to be Godwin. Also, I did mean to look at these roots at some point. It's also weird how just that cuts off. Just sharp cut off there. That's almost exactly like the sharp cut off in Kaled. Weird waterfall. Godwin is Marika. Yeah. Is there an actual roof here? Oh yeah, okay. Interesting. Damn, there's lots of roots. Where's the big one? It's like over here, isn't it? I can't really see anything very well. So that's the Godwin one. I don't have the map piece, really. Where's the map piece? To see stuff with free cam many times you need the right collision. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm kind of just messing around right now. So if you go further, you'll land in the hunter's dream. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the same concept as, I don't know, these are definitely roots. Let me go grab that map piece. I suppose I could just cheat it, but it's right over here, I think. Things disappear if you're too far away. Yeah. I don't think anything of Godwin's mind is left in any capacity. I don't know. I don't know about his mind specifically. So let me just get back here. Because the D-twin thing seems to suggest that there's this distinction between body, mind, and soul. And with the Ronnie Godwin thing, we only really have two of those components. So their minds are not really mentioned in that whole thing. So that's over to the left here. So what is that actually referencing? Oh, stop. I'm going to give myself a headache. Can't really tell what this is. Because these are like more straight. These ones. It's all kind of different. There's all sorts of different things going on here. Like there are leaves. Why are there leaves on the roots? That doesn't make any sense. Roots don't have leaves. So these are branches. They also do look a bit more gold. And there's none of those red flowers. Like these are, but these also have leaves. And these also have leaves. It's all upside down. See, this is what I'm saying. It's all upside down. Roots are trees. Everything's the wrong way up. Hmm. I mean, that would make sense if that was the Erd tree trunk, because that's about where it is, right? That's Queen's bedchamber, so it's the trunk actually has to be about right there, on the Elden Throne. Or I suppose, wait, Elden Throne is that's the actual throne, so the trunk should start there. So it's not quite, yeah, it should be like there. And it does reach to the water. Where's the overhead light coming from? Well, one of the cool things in 1.0, there's this like creepy golden light everywhere. Now it's much there's much less of it going on, but in 1.0 it's much more extreme. It's fairly brightly lit. Kind of similar to like that kind of dusk look from the Elden Beast Arena. Is this the Godwin one? Yeah. Shiny. It's like there's blood in it. So is Melina Mikola? Good question. My sense is I think Melina is Marika. She's a piece of Marika. I'm going to talk about this in my video whenever I finish it. Is Marika everyone? Okay, so here's the thing. let me just actually give this its due. So Mikola watered the Halig tree with his blood. And that sort of, he wanted to grow an Erd tree. And what he did was he watered a sapling with his blood. So that means that he thought, at least, the way to grow an Erd tree is to water it with his blood. Which implies that that's how Marika grew her Erd tree. Is she watered something with her blood. She fed it with her blood. Or at least with something equivalent to Mikola's blood. whether it has to be divine blood or specifically America's blood or some other thing that's like equivalent. But the idea of it being coming from America, I think, is pretty strong. And then you look at what happens, right? So this Erd tree grows, she dominates the world, and she starts handing out blessings to everyone. Um, she is like the Erd tree has is dripping with dew, and uh, there's like this baptism kind of correlation here. Like it's this magical syrup of the Erd tree, and what does it do? It heals people, it regenerates them, um, and now something is different from those early days, but like the age of abundance, the age of plenty, right? That is this time where America is like handing out blessings. She's bestowing blessings on people from the Erd tree. The Erd tree's sap is being collected. And so in a sense, like the sap is coming from her blood. If you accept that she grew the Erd tree with her blood, which I think it's not a fact, but given that like given that we know that's how Mikola grew his Halig tree, it seems to be like that is pretty um I don't know. And we also have like we also have things like the where's this wait, where's the minor Erd tree? Am I crazy? Shouldn't there be a minor Erd tree over here somewhere? Oh, I guess it's this one. Um well, they're not loaded in, but there's usually jars around here, right? Everything's probably deloaded because I'm too far away, but there's the jars around the minor Erd trees, right? And they're filled with blood, they're filled with remains. So the idea that a tree is fed with blood, and there's other things about that, like the arterial leaf is pulsing with blood. There's the sacramental bud, which is so this idea of like trees and plants feeding off of blood. It makes sense that the Erd tree would have been grown from Maricus blood, which means that the dew of the Erd tree, the sap, is has some relationship to Maricus blood. I don't know if I would say it is Maricus blood exactly, but it's somehow related to that. So then the idea is that everyone in the lands between is getting blessed with that Marica blood. So if you want to say, is everyone Marica? Marica might be in everyone. And it also, I mean, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of Christian parallels and a lot of mystery cult parallels. And the thing that all the mystery cults have in common is this idea of there's the dying and rising God who their resurrection is sort of taken into yourself through some kind of communion. Usually it's some kind of meal, it might be something else, there's different rituals, but that communion, it's the act of you're actually taking that God into yourself so that you can experience the resurrection like physically. You are physically the language here is kind of hard to get around, but I think that idea, it does kind of suggest that like America might be inside everyone. And if she is, then everyone might be everyone might be uh, able to manifest aspects of America, which might explain why there's all these weird things with identity. And it would also line up with the centered the topic that Center Tarnished is explored, in which I talked with him about, of the whole world being sort of um a dream of America's, in a sense. Even if it was, I tend to lean towards it being more real in some way, but that those might not be mutually exclusive. Moose asks, "Will we ever get life-size Ronnie dolls for reasons?" Horny ban. Um, uh, I think it went great tree stump, crown sprouting, then Erd tree grown from stump. Well, we're also missing the other tree, because like the Halig tree has what looks like two stumps. Actually, I do kind of want to look at that really quick. This probably won't be fully loaded in because I guess I didn't get there yet, but where are we? Is it loaded in at all? Shouldn't there be a giant tree here? Damn, that's weird. They didn't load it in at all. Interesting. Oh, there it is. Okay. Just hidden. Actually, it might be easier to see with a LOD model, but let's see. No, you can barely see anything with all this. Oh, maybe. Hold on. Hold on. Let's try it out. I need to learn how to take off the visual effects. Okay, kind of terrible to look at right now, but you can see how there's like two main trunks going up. And if I was actually loading in this place properly, it might be clearer. And that just lines up with all the different ideas that we have of, for example, the cross tree tower shield, right? An old interleaving tree, and obviously the shadow of the Erd tree, and also all the crucible designs where you have this caduceus symbol, two things intertwining around each other. Everything is showing that pattern, and it's all associated. I mean, it's all over the Halig tree, it's all over anything related to the crucible. This idea that the early version of the Erd tree is the early version of an Erd tree is two things intertwined. I think we're missing a tree with the Erd tree. We're missing something. It was somehow disconnected. I don't know exactly how or what. I thought that it might have been the snake, because also that caduceus design also comes in with double snakes, and we have all these designs of double snakes, but there's only one immortal snake. So I was thinking, what if it's what if the snake is the other part that's supposed to be twisting around the Erd tree, but it's not? This is a little crazy, but that's another idea I had. If the goal of Erd tree burial is to return to the Erd tree, why bury people at the connected roots of the Great Tree instead of directly at the Erd tree roots? So I guess we can address the translation thing there. So the Japanese text uses a a word which translates to, is basically three kanji, which means great, like big, tree, and roots. It's all just put together. The Japanese syntax is such that syntax and grammar is such that you don't have articles, you don't have like a and the, you don't have capitalization. Um, so that could mean great tree roots, or it could mean great tree roots. And with the other ways that things have been translated, you do have the Erd tree itself. It's generally just called the golden tree or the great golden tree. It's sometimes called the great tree. And so most people who have looked at that now are of the opinion that the that Japanese text is just been mistranslated, and that it just means great tree roots. In other words, it's the giant roots of this tree. Now, I'm not completely convinced, because so there's like a linguistic thing here of, you have let's say when you talk about day and night. Now, day and night are part of a dichotomy, right? It's day or it's night. But also, day and night are both part of a larger thing, which we call day, right? Like every day, there's a day and a night, right? And so when you say day, you have to use context to figure out whether you're talking about like the category or the specific. And my feeling is when we talk about the Erd tree, we might be talking about, it might be a word like day, where there's the Erd tree as it is now. Like when we see there's the giant golden tree, right? That is the Erd tree. But also, the Erd tree has changed, and there's like, is the crucible the Erd tree, for example? I think you might be able to say that the crucible was the Erd tree. It was still the Erd tree, even though that's referring to something different than what we now call the Erd tree, if that makes sense. So the idea that there was a tree which was not the current day Erd tree, but is part of this larger thing, which is also the Erd tree, that kind of, I don't know, that just makes sense to me. I don't know if it's true, but I could see that being the case. Bilbo says, what confuses me is that they make the distinction that the roots were once connected but no longer are. If it's the same tree, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't remember exactly how the Japanese text is phrased, but I don't think that it's I think it makes, you can read it as being one thing in the Japanese text, and it makes sense. Um, so yeah, I know what you mean. I know the point that you're bringing up, but I think that the way it's phrased in the Japanese text is slightly different. Oh yeah, and then Double DZ brings up a good point, which is that there's this idea of like, well, the one thing that we know about the Erd tree right now is this giant golden thing, and yet the gold doesn't completely cover every branch, and down below, the roots are not gold like that. So we also know that the Elden Ring is the root of the Golden Order, and the Erd Tree is, well, according to at least one spirit, the Erd Tree is the Golden Order. So if you imagine that the Golden Order, like this golden carapace on the Erd Tree, is the expression of the Golden Order, then the Elden Ring is the root of that tree. Whereas the physical tree, which we could also call the Erd Tree, has roots, and that's something else, and that's just a great tree. It's not a golden tree. It's not the Erd tree that we normally talk about, even though it's still part of the Erd tree, if that makes sense. So are the minor Erd trees that are connected to the Erd tree not the Erd tree? Yeah, I think. Yeah, exactly. I think this is. It may not be the most productive line of inquiry, unless there's some theory really rests upon this idea. I wouldn't get hung up on what we call things, and it's more important what functionally happened. So I think it's clear that the Erd tree did not look like this always. This giant tree did not always look like this. I think it's clear that there was a physical tree, and that at some point this tree became something. This golden carapace came to exist. So whatever, if you want to say that's the crucible, if you want to say the crucible is the great tree, if you want to say that's something completely different, it doesn't really matter, as far as I'm concerned, unless you're trying to say something about the condition of it. Um, so back to Melina being Mikla. My idea. So first of all, there's a couple things that I think are reasonably um, supported. One is the idea that identity has multiple components. It is not a singular, indivisible thing. We know that to be a fact because of the situation with Ronnie and Godwin. We know that you have a soul and a body, and one of these can be killed while the other survives. We also know that Marika and Radigan, well, we know that Radigan is Marika, and how does that make sense? It doesn't matter. The point is that we have two people or one person, or we have one person is another one. Like, we're breaking the law of identity in some way. So identity has components. It is not the indivisible thing that we would normally treat it as such in the real world. Then we also have this idea of the crucible, where you have blending of life together. We see manifestations of that where disparate life, disparate the qualities, the characteristics of disparate life forms are blended together. We have the D twins. We have memories, I would say, of Godfrey and Loretta. By the way, Sekiro, if you're still here, I meant to catch up on that. I forgot to say that. I think that the Godfrey Golden Shade is a memory of Godfrey, which is why his axe is not broken, and that also sort of corresponds with the whole idea of remembrances being hewn into the Erd tree, and also even the idea that you can get like the bell bearings from people and get their items. Um, but the point is that we have lots of different how would you put it? Lots of different weirdness weirdnesses regarding identity. Identity is not this. It's not just about like everyone has their own unique individual soul, um and that is consistent, and there's something else going on, that these things can be blended together, there can be pieces, they can be shattered, they can be pulled apart. So this is the situation for Elden Ring's world regarding identity of people, is that they are not, it doesn't work like the real world. So when you say, is Melina Mikola, um, my feeling is I don't believe that is true in the sense of Melina is equivalent to Mikola, but I do think it's kind of true. So, in the same way that I don't think like Radigan is not equivalent to Merica, and I don't think that Mikola is equivalent to Saint Trina. There are other aspects to these relationships that even if you say, well, yes, Mikola is Saint Trina or Radigan is Merica, they're different somehow. They're components or they're aspects or they're maybe it's an inner version and an outer version or some other thing going on there. Um, my feeling with Melina is that she is. This is sort of what my video is going to be about. But I'll give you the rundown. My feeling is that Merica was the Glomide Queen, and again, I don't say Merica is equivalent to the Glomide Queen, but I say, let's say the Glomide Queen was Merica, um, and Melina is an aspect, a memory, an echo of Merica that embodies some of those qualities, some of those Glomide Queen qualities. Um, so that's number one. Then I think one way this might be true is that the Glomide Queen might be Merica before Radigan existed. But that I won't get into that. Um, then you have to look at the fact that to the degree that anything like genetics and bloodlines exists in Elden Ring, and clearly the thematically like bloodlines are very important, but I don't think genes exist in Elden Ring, but there's some kind of equivalent to that. Then you have to accept that Mikola, if Radigan is Merica, then Mikola and Melania are essentially clones of Merica, right? There's no new material there. Radigan is Merica, therefore it's a kind of magical parthenogenesis, which means that Mikola and Melania are just the same thing as Merica. Now, maybe there's something else involved there, the influence of outer gods and so on, and curses. But in like, you can argue about how important that analogy is, but the analogy is pretty clear that they're essentially clones of Merica. So if Melina is like an aspect of Merica, um, and by the way, we already know that something like this kind of exists when you look at Millicent and her sisters, which are clearly offshoots of some sort. There's clearly, I don't know if they're clones or possible alternatives or something like this to Melania, but they're, I mean, I think the metaphor here, right, is like of a tree sprouting multiple branches or spreading seeds around. And so whatever Millicent is to Melania, and by the way, Melina wears those same clothes. She wears the traveler's set, the same ones as Millicent and her sisters. So I think Melina is that to Merica or something equivalent. So if Melina is like an aspect of Merica and Mikola is essentially a clone of Merica, um, they are related in that sense. And also the fact that they might share attributes of Merica might mean that they're not just related in like a they might be metaphysically related as well as historically related, if that makes sense. So not it's not just that it's not I could see it being the case that they're not just it's not just like a child who has the same eyes as their mother or something like this, right? Or imagine okay, here's a good analogy to think about it. Um Imagine you have like two children and they both have their mother's eyes, right? But now you imagine that their mother's eyes are magical and that whoever has her eyes she can see out of. Then there's like a more magical connection between those children. It's they're not just adopting attributes of their their mother. They're sharing something of America in both of them. And in that sense, I think Mikola may be, or I think maybe Saint Trina may be Melina, but also not Melina. In the same way that Melina is the Glomide Queen, but not the Glomide Queen, and America, but not America. I think that the identities here are not discrete. They don't have discrete boundaries. That's my feeling. Um, and I think Ronnie is also part of the mix here as well. I think she's a child of America, and that's why Ronnie shares some similarities with Melina, is because they're also kind of similarly sharing attributes of America. And I think it's also the same reason why Godwin and Radigan kind of have some similarities. There's more America in Mikola than Melania. Um, I'm not sure about that. Um, I think you could. Mikola is closer to what America is now, but I think America is more than what America is now. And so I think actually Melania, the fact that Melania is like more dissimilar from what we see of America now, I think gives insight into America because that comes from America. It is from America. I mean, I guess you can argue about like Radigan and where he came from or whatever, but um, like being a strong warrior. I mean, we know that America was more. I mean, she conquered the whole land, in a way. So Melania is maybe more of what America used to be. Mikola is like America after her rebirth. I also think that America probably died at some point, um, possibly to create the Erd Tree. I'm not sure. Melina gives us most of what we know about America. Yeah, I mean, the fact that Melina has this ability to recount America's exact words, I think, is like it's pretty clear that she's not just a normal child of America. America realized she hates how unchanging her eternal order was, and when she wanted to change it, Radigan was like, no. I think she might have also never been on board with it because there's also kind of a theme of like being used by higher forces, being you're having your fate sort of predetermined, and feeling locked in by that. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure if America was ever gung ho on the Golden Order, or at least the part of America that is the current America, if that makes sense. I think Radigan might have, like, I think America maybe became God, and in becoming God, she was God, and like, if you're a person and you become a god, you're almost like a different being, and maybe those two people could exist at the same time. Do you feel Radigan is somehow compelled to the order, or that he just naturally loves the heck out of it? I mean, the fact that Radigan is turned into a sword to me suggests, like, that's a pretty clear metaphor that he's a tool. I mean, he literally becomes a tool of the Elden Beast. So at least on the metaphorical level, like, yeah, he's the sword of order. Um, yes, Gandalf the Gucci. We were just talking about Melina as Mikola. Yeah, I would be more I'd be more inclined to say Melina is Saint Trina. Um, but I mean, I get it's all kind of putting any of these theories in here is kind of it's difficult to word it in the right way to make it clear. Did she become a god like in our sense, or more like in non-monotheistic traditions? Um, well, most purely monotheistic traditions, God is the creator of the universe. Um, so if America came from somewhere and became God, that's not the case. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that she couldn't have, in a sense, created her own world. And so maybe in a kind of monotheistic God, but also in the grand scheme of things, not the ultimate deity. I sort of think Melina has a Radigan vibe also. I don't want to say tool, but more purpose than person. I would say uh yes, but also almost the exact opposite as well, because Melina Melina doesn't have any memory, right? She doesn't know who she is. She has to go to the Erd Tree where she was born, um, and figure out her purpose. She's searching for her purpose. And then what she says is that even though, like, her purpose, she was designed for this purpose, she has chosen freely to become kindling. And I think that's really important, that it's like she's saying, well, I I'm going to do what my mother told me to do, but I'm not doing it because of that. I'm doing it because I want to, because I'm freely choosing to do that. And I think that's like an important emphasis. She didn't need to say that. She could have been just a tool. Tim Diggity says, I think it's also possible Melina is just a third persona, since Mikola's shadow might be that trio of lone spirit wolves. Um, I mean, the second part of that, I'm not entirely sure about, although it is that statue in Faramazula is very Um, I don't think it's an exact match for Mikola, but I mean, the only other reasonable options I would say are Godwin, America, or some other person that we don't know about. And any one of those is, I think, about equally likely. Um, but I would say I just think that identity in this game is not like I would be comfortable saying or speculating that, let's say, Melina is Mikola, Melina is Saint Trina, Melina is America, and Melina is Ronnie, all at the same time, and also that she's none of those, all at the same time. Because I think that identity just doesn't work the way it does in real life. If the Newman and Elden Ring both come from places outside the lands between, I wonder if there is then a sort of eternal rivalry or past bad blood, considering what we see in the Elden Beast background. Um, hmm. Eternal rivalry between what? I don't think I follow. I do think one thing I was thinking about today is um there's an equivocation between shadows and beasts, right? So what is the Elden Beast a shadow of? I think rather than saying that the Elden Beast, I also had this crazy idea about the sun, that the sun is the outer form of either the Greater Will or the Elden Beast or the Elden Ring or all of those. Um, I mean, it's too weird. I was thinking about making a video on this, but I'll just sort of ramble for now and see where I get. It's too weird that, okay, the sun is like not important, right? There's this tiny little sun. Let me warp somewhere where I can see it properly. Tiny little sun, um, never mentioned except in the context of the Sun Realm shield and the eclipsed sun, and then also a couple icons like dung eaters. Oh, I'm not going to be able to see it here, am I? Where's a good place to see things from? This be better. Um, I suppose I need to wait until the weather changes. I don't really know how the weather system in this game works. The Elden Beast is the shadow of the Elden Ring. Yeah, that's sort of where I'm going. I'm not sure if I would say exactly that, um, but okay. Here's the thing: if there were no sun, the game would make sense in a way, because it's in Miyazaki's metaphorical landscape. Then the Erd Tree just that is the sun now. That takes the place of the sun. The fact that there is a sun, uh, that's super weird. And the problem with this is, okay, the sun in real life and in Elden Ring is white in the sky, but usually people draw it as yellow because of how the atmosphere responds to it. Um, we usually represent the sun as something yellow. Um, the sun is super important in all religions. in all mystical traditions, the sun represents gold. It represents the life-giving force because it allows things to grow. It allows you to see. It's when you're active. The sun is like the watchful eye. It's the eye of Horus. It's the eye of Ra rather. It's the lead god in many ancient traditions. It's like the most important thing, and here it's like not even an element. And then you also have you have stars are super important in Elden Ring, maybe the most important thing. And you also have a golden star that was sent into the lands between with the Elden Beast. And you have all of this stuff about fire and light and shadows. And then you have a day and night cycle, and the day and night cycle actually means something. There's people who worship the night and they never see day. There's people who are on crucifixes who scream at night. There's people who go crazy at night. You can see the stars at night. Like all of this is circumstantially points to the sun being incredibly important, like the most important element of the cosmological landscape in this game. And yet there's no information. So my feeling is the sun is the sun if we have this idea of like two worlds existing, the outer, like there's the world outside of the circle, the world outside of the sphere, and the world inside of the sphere, in the same way that the moon might have an inverse and a like an inside and an outside, then the sun is the outer version of, I don't know, the Elden Ring, the Elden Beast, whatever this thing is that on Earth is manifesting as this source of light. And like it's a little weird because the analogy of like a star falling and seeding life feels too on the nose. And so the idea of like the golden star actually hitting, and then you also have this crater in the middle of the lands between, which this is clearly, I think, a crater. Especially because I hope it's not raining if I'm here. You can see how like this is super weird, right? This is in between Caelid and the mountaintops. There's just like this flat drop off. And it makes it pretty clear that like this whole area in between the middle of the map, where I think the Shadowlands is going to be, this is like some kind of crater. But that would be weird if the sun was the golden star, because then did the sun crash into the earth? I don't know. And I think possibly the Shadowlands. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this, but I definitely think the sun is super important. Oh, it's literally called Crater Lake. Wait, really? Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, confirmed then. I'm gonna message you about that because I wanna look for that. Um, what if America stole the power of the sun to make the Erd Tree? I don't know if it's exactly that. I want to say it's more like, hmm, it's more like the sun corresponds to something. Um, my feeling is at least that the sun corresponds to something internal. Yeah, grace is literally the reflection of the sun on water. Um, yeah, I don't think like I don't think America like took something from the sun. Although actually another element of this which I think is kind of interesting um is the spell Flame of the Fell God. And it says that this ball of raging fire is said to be inhabited by a fell god. And I was kind of thinking, what if that's a sun? What if the sun was the fell god and it was red and gold, and then the red got extracted and purified, the fire got removed from the sun, and that's what creates the golden order, something like that. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with that, but I think this might be the sun. And I guess that there isn't a good way to like test all of this, but I will be very curious to see any sun-like thing in the sky in the DLC, because we've already seen in one of the shots in the trailer that the moon is there. And that I can believe that doesn't really tell us anything about the nature of the Shadowlands, um because the moon, it could be, actually I have to check which moon it is. I think it's the ring moon, but I'll have to check that. Um the moon could exist in multiple places. I could see that being a thing. But if the sun is there, I don't think it'll be the same sun. It could be an eclipsed sun, or it might just be permanently dusk and you can never see the sun. There also might be just something else in the sky besides the sun. Um, oh, well, the other thing that makes me think about this is I think possibly before any of this arrived, I think maybe the world had no sun. And so it was just permanently night. And so the cultures prior to when this happened, I think, like the ancient dynasty and the Deathrite priests, I think that might have been a world that had no sun. And it was just the stars of the night sky. The final shot of the DLC trailer with Mikla makes it look like a giant sun is there. Yeah, Tengo says, metaphorically, this makes perfect sense. The sun is kind of like a contradiction. It gives life, but it's also deadly to us at the same time because it's a ball of fire. What if you remove the fire? And I think, what if you remove the fire and then you also remove the gold? Well, then you're just left with a white dot in the sky that's totally pointless. Um, Also, the idea of the initial state of the world being without a sun feels very, because like also in Dark Souls the sun was really weird. um it was sort of implied to be like the first flame, but it also wasn't. And I think that was just the beginning of this idea of like, it's a correspondence. It's, again, it's like as above so below. It's this thing in the celestial realm that corresponds to something in this world. Um, so it's not that the Erd tree replaced the sun or that the sun was then used or anything like this, but it's like the sun is the it's like the quantum entanglement or something. It's like that's the it's the correspondence. It's the other part of it. The sun in Anor Londo was an illusion, um, but I don't think it was that the sun didn't exist exactly. I think it was this. It was part of Gwendolyn trying to make it seem like the Age of the Gods was still strong, that it was still a the first flame was still vibrant, that things were still better than they were. And I don't know entirely whether that's purely illusion either. I think it may be a way, like, because again, with all of these games, there's this the distinction between what people believe and the reality of the world is a little more uh it's not always so discreet. So the idea that Gwendolyn like creates this illusion, maybe it kind of still works that way then. And when you destroy the illusion, the sun isn't there. But then later on in like Dark Souls 3, you have the sun and it's being swallowed, or perhaps it's being um, filled out, or it's um, what's the word, quenched by the Dark Soul, and that's kind of so it's this representation of like the Dark Soul coalescing, and this is this inevitable end of flame, and so it's kind of a representation of what's happening with fire in the world, and obviously that makes sense because the sun is fire. So it's yeah, I think it's kind of the same idea. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think. Oh, oh, howdy, Ratatosker. How's it going? Why is the sun referred to as drained of color? Well, it's just the eclipse sun which is drained of color, right? Um, is it this one? No, the other one. Yeah, the eclipse sun is drained of color. Oh yeah, and that's another thing is that it apparently keeps destined death at bay. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, the moon. I mean, an eclipse is the moon covering the sun. There's also what is that? The Great Hood, right? Where is that? That says something about the moon. A burial shroud, and it has this quote about this is the moon that young Renala gazed upon, which is really weird. But the drained of color thing is interesting because that's also how the somber smithing stones are described. Right, so all the somber stones are exactly the same as the normal stones, but it says they're drained of color. Which is really weird. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. The only thing I can think about with color is you have Morgoth's sword, which is like this rainbow thing, right? It's a curved sword. Did I pass it? Oh, there we go. And that's this like strange rainbow thing, and that's because of his accursed blood. And there is in alchemy, there is often this there's like the imagery of the peacock and rainbows, um which from what I remember is usually about like it happens after the sort of the dark night of the soul, after the Nigredo, that you have this explosion of color, which is sort of a representation of like the the variety, the the what would you say, what would you call it, chromaticism of the spiritual world. It's like sort of being awoken to the beauty of the world, of a higher realm of existence. um I don't know if that's how that would connect to any of this. Draining of color, I would also think, I mean, if your cheeks drain of color, it's because you're afraid, right? Or if the blood drains from your face, or from your body, it's because you're petrified, you're fearful, or you're dead. And we do have like America, our god, is now a stone husk. So there might be something about that, that like somehow they're being drained of color is having a is somehow being dead or partly dead. It would also kind of go along with the whole like frozen, icy theme. That's all kind of. Isn't there something else? Is it Ronnie's ring or something like that? That mentions being drained of color. Um, well, that's black and white. That's kind of interesting. It's weird that an eclipsed sun keeps destined death at bay, like something is removed to slow destined death and keep the soulless demigods in stasis. Something is removed to slow destined death. I think what's strange about it is you would think the eclipsed sun would be a state of the sun. Like that's something, you have a sun and then it gets eclipsed. And so now the sun has been eclipsed. But the way it phrases it makes it seem like the eclipsed sun is a specific, like maybe there's multiple types of suns and the eclipsed sun is one sun, and maybe that's just a completely different thing than the sun, the normal sun. Like it is the protective star, the eclipsed sun. It's not just the sun is the protective star, it's the eclipsed sun. And that's, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Although maybe going back to, well, Redatosker wasn't here for this, but earlier on the stream I was suggesting that one of the moons is the inside of the moon and the other moon is the outside of the moon. Maybe the eclipsed sun is the inside of the sun. And maybe that's, I mean, you know what looks like an eclipsed sun is um frenzy ending. Oh no, it's before this. This. Is that an eclipse sun? Hmm. Questions, questions. Oh, dark moon is... Oh, that's right. It says it's leaden. Leaden just means... does that mean heavy? No, leaden means something else. Cold? Yeah, heavy. Okay. Oh, look at Dark Moon Ring. Let's see. Where is it? A treasure of Noxtella, the Eternal City. It also means dull and gray. Okay. So this moon... Let me look at the... Let me find the image so I can look at it close up. This moon doesn't look exactly like the other... Like either of the other ones, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Where is it? Moon, 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 moon. So... There's like a little crater there. You can see some markings, but I don't see the rings at least. Full moon, dark moon, black moon. It's the triple-faced goddess. Yeah. Have I been to the Carrion Study Hall here? Yes. I mean, I think this is way more important than most people have given it credit for. This whole thing. Let's take a look at this moon here. Celestial globe, transmit to posterity the wisdom of the moon and stars. There's like this effect that happens when you change it. Rotating the moon. Seems very complicated. Okay, but when you actually place it down, watch this, what happens. Like, what is that? That's not the globe. Like, what is happening there? Something just happened, right? Like, reality just... something, like, shifted in reality. And then we get this. And then this gets turned upside down. which is really weird. And then, see, this goes back to my whole thing about reflection and inversion, because when it's not there, so like if you imagine we invert it, what's above us, right? What's above the tower? We can only go down the tower, which is going up the tower, and then you get there, you get to the end. But if you were to go up the tower when it's inverted, that would be like going down the tower. So you'd be going down into the ground, right? And what happens is there's just a pool of water right here. And there's a bunch of places with water that it doesn't really make that much sense there should be water there. Like, for example, the Erd Tree Sanctuary. Oh, what's up, John? Welcome. So, for example, right here, there's just pools of water right here. Right? That is water, right? I'm not crazy. It actually doesn't seem to be animated. Hold on. Let me put on the free cam. Oh, I'm too fast. Hold on. Too fast. Okay. Yeah, so there's just pool of water here. On this side too. Like, why? Look at how. Stop it. Like, we're super high up. It's not like we're at ground level. So what's that doing there? There's just too many things weird with water and reflection. And yeah, so I think the moon, going back to the moon thing, for people who weren't here initially, the reason that I hopped on is because I think that one of the moons is inside. It's the inside of the moon. I think the moon that we normally see is the inside of the moon. So that's this moon. Let's go faster again. This moon is an orb. Right? Let's go. So this one, you can see it's actually an orb. Like, there, okay. So as I move up, you can see it's got like dimensions to it. This is the real moon, or this is the outside of the moon. And you can see it's got kind of it's got a little bit of that, of those lines there. But it's only, the lines are only happening on like this frosty layer. You know, over here is just the craters and stuff. Normal moon craters. And then over on this side, lines. Okay, and then this moon, I think, is inside the moon. I think it's the inside of the moon rather than the outside. And I think that is what is happening when you see, if I can pull it up, all the way down at the bottom. When you see this. Oops. Too big. This thing. You're going inside the moon. And so now I'm kind of wondering if, and I think that's the whole thing, the inner order, the outer order, it's all about inversion. There's a reality that exists. It's not like, I don't think it's that there's a reality like there's a universe and then there's another universe next to it. I think it's like the inside of a sphere versus the outside of a sphere. And so you have that with the moons, and maybe you also have that with the suns. Maybe the eclipsed sun is the inside of the sun because it would be dark inside the sun. I mean, in an Elden Ring sun. If it's projecting light outwards, then maybe the inside is dark because everything's inverted, right? It's all opposites. Um, and maybe that's the flame of frenzy because the sun it's the giver of life. It's an outward projected force. So if you were to invert that, the idea of creating more life, to invert that is everything is death. You need to it's to unite everything in the middle, in the center, to regress back towards one point, which would be the inside of the sun, and uh, you invert the life giving force, and that becomes everything dies, or everything is. It's not even that everything dies because death is a part of life. So this sort of outward force is the bringing up. It's I guess it's causality. It's the force of making things live and die, birth and death over and over again. That's the cycle. But if you were to invert that whole cycle, then the um it's the opposite of that. It's not even death. I don't even know what you would say. It's lifelessness. And that's basically what the frenzied flame is. It's the whole idea of like the Big Bang, the expansion of the world, is a mistake. We need to revert that, and we need to go back to one point where there is no life. Um, when you say inside, do you mean the stuff contained inside, or do you mean the inner surface? Um, okay, so like imagine you're looking at a ball, right? So you see the outside of the ball. Let me bring up a better. Um, there might be some like e- example in mathematics that might be able to show what I'm talking about. No, it's better if I just describe it. So imagine you're looking at a ball, right? Now you're in like you're looking at the outside of the ball, and from the ball's perspective, you are outside the ball, right? The ball has an inside that you can't see. So now imagine that you flip that. Now imagine that the ball, like you're still looking at the ball, but inside and outside are flipped. So to be outside the ball is to go through the thing that you're seeing, whereas where you are is inside the ball. Clifford Taurus? Someone's telling me to look up something. Hold on. Taurus? Clifford Taurus. It's not really Taurus isn't what I'm talking about. Maybe good animation on Wikipedia. Let me see. Let me see. Um yeah, exactly. Just think in 4D. Exactly. Exactly. Well, okay, like this isn't exactly what I'm talking about, but like if you've ever seen a tesseract, um it's kind of that way of imagining things. Let me see if I can find a good gif here. So you know the idea of like in the first dimension is just a point. Second dimension, you extend that out, so now you have a line. Third dimension, no wait, I'm getting that wrong. Second dimension, you imagine you've got a square. Now, if you multiply that into the third dimension, then you get a cube. And then if you go into the fourth dimension, you get something called the tesseract. But since we can't see in 4 dimensions, um, there's no, you can't like really represent that except through some kind of like animation. So let me find a good one here. That's not very good. None of these are, maybe this is better. Yeah, that's a fair animation of it. The idea is like you have a cube. So when you go from a square to a cube, it's like every face of the square has another square attached to it at right angles. Right? That's the idea. So in 4 dimensions, you have every face of the cube has another cube attached to it at right angles. We don't we don't know like attaching another cube to a face of a cube at right angles doesn't make sense in 3D because you need that fourth dimension in order to have a right angle, and that's basically what the tesseract is meant to represent. Um, I don't know why I got on this, but that's yeah. But I think imagine the sphere version of this, where all you have to think of is when you look at a sphere. All right, let's just have a moon that we can look at. Is there a nice animated GIF? I just want like a little animation. There's a little animation. Come on. Maybe a little rotating ball or something. That's horrifying. Isn't there just something? Okay, here's our Earth spinning. This is weird if we use the example of Earth, but it's fine. Okay, so you look at this. You imagine you're looking at a ball or a globe, right? And all the continents and stuff, like, that's on the outside face of the sphere. And then where you are, you're standing and you're looking at this ball. You're outside of the sphere, right? So imagine that everything is exactly the same, but now we're just switching inside and outside so that whatever is inside this is actually outside the sphere, and whatever is outside it is actually inside the sphere. That's what I think is going on with the moon, and maybe with the eclipsed sun. Do you think maybe the reflection in the water is the true representation, but the other is the one influenced by the faith of the Carians, which might be a similar process to the Erdtree's frame? Uh, I'm not totally sure if I understand what you're saying, but I'm not. So one of the things I was saying earlier is this thing about um it was this allegory of Plato's cave, where I think that Elden Ring's reality might have something like this, where there's like a reality of forms, but all that we see is the shadows that it's projecting. So I think that the moon, I think both moons are maybe, or all the moons are not necessarily the real thing. I think they're just projections on the mundane world. Um, Crunchy, do you think we can connect the giant stone coffin-like boats in the DLC trailer to the magic coffins in the Newman cities under the lands between? Could have been death worshippers. I wouldn't say necessarily the coffins, but I think definitely the stela of where it has the story of people arriving in boats. I think that's got to be the Newman arriving, and I think those boats are probably Newman boats, the ones in the DLC trailer. What does that mean though? As in, is there anything you can glean from this line of thought? If that's referring to the moon being inverted, I don't know. It was literally just a thought I had and started streaming about it. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what exactly that informs, except just that this general idea of like, because okay, for a long time I've been trying to figure out this problem of Elden Ring's world, which is like there's clearly like two realities happening, and I couldn't really understand the relationship. So I thought maybe it's like there's a multiverse, and like there's a another world which is next to ours in some sense, or there's another dimension which is above us or something like this. But I think maybe the relationship is more like inversion, where it's the inside versus the outside, and that whole idea of inside outside thing. Yeah, exactly. The golden bark layer of the Erd tree, outer order, inner order, outer gods, like this whole thing of inside and outside, and even like the inside of a person being their spirit or their soul or something versus their outside, and the shadow being inside. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure where that goes, but I just think I feel like that's a better metaphor for understanding the reality. The Ghost and Soul Castle says the sun has not been swallowed. Our prayers were lacking. Yeah. Swallowed is an interesting word. And actually, in the Japanese, I don't remember exactly what the word is, but um, the word for eclipse in Japanese, from what I remember, there's a there's like a sort of astronomical scientific word which most people don't use, and then the word which people usually use to describe eclipse is it's something it might what am I thinking of? It's like consumed or like eaten by maggots specifically. Um, Let me see if I can remember it or find it. Bu- 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 Was that it? Mushi. Yeah. So the kanji for eclipse comes from the component kanji for uh, basically bugs eating, and it's this thing of like being um, well, I'm losing my focus now. It's this thing of being consumed by like insects, and that's the same or similar word is used for the marred leather shield and wooden shield. That whole thing. I could probably find that actually. Um, Swallowed is an interesting word. Is such a great line. Yeah. Um, Perhaps trying to put the sun into the inside of the moon. Yeah. That's an interesting thought. Is an eclipse the sun and moon going sloppy style on each other? Um, overcomplicating things. I think things are pretty complicated, I have to say. I think it's pretty complicated. Um, or I think it's more like in order the 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 genesis of most of the ideas in Elden Ring is actually pretty simple, but it's all like poetic ideas. And since we can't just like jump to understanding them immediately, we have to go through a process of complication in order to get to a place where it makes sense in a simpler way. That's my feeling, at least. Um, what am I looking for? Shields, right? So, isn't it called Marred? Yeah, Marred Leather Shield. So, yeah, Eclipsed Leather Shield, because this kanji, um, that's the kanji for bug, and that's the kanji for eat. So it's this thing of being eaten. Now, I think when we actually get the Eclipse ones, I don't think it uses the same exact word. Yeah, it's slightly different word, but that same kanji in there. So it's this thing of being eaten by bugs, which is very strange. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it here. I'm getting tired and I need to eat something. So, um, thanks for stopping by, everyone, and hopefully I'll get a video out sometime soon. All right, take care, everyone. I'll try not to leave it so long until next stream. All right, bye.